action time again as we bring you round 6 of the 4x4 Mega World Inland Off-Road Championship, the Stella 250, held in the Northwest Province. It's all to play for in the biggest off-road car racing championship in South Africa, taking place over 8 grueling rounds, covering 2,500 kilometers of rugged off-road terrain. This action is brought to you by series sponsors 4x4 Mega World in conjunction with Propeller Center and Firm Power Tools. Another record entry of 42 cars descended on the small town of Stella with only one thing in mind: racing, and more importantly, winning. With the championship made up of 2 categories, namely production vehicles and the special vehicles, spanning over 9 individual classes, the competition was set to be, as always, fast, furious, and being held in August with no rains yet in sight, super dusty. As usual, an early morning greeted the competitors, getting ready for the day's action. A slight breeze in the air with not a cloud in sight. Dust was again to be the order of the day. Whilst the usual suspects were all in attendance, chasing down their respective championships, we also have a few new faces and cars in the lineup. The 4x4 Mega World Inland Off-Road Championship seems to be going from strength to strength, and it bodes well for the future of the sport. The all-important drivers' briefing got proceedings underway, and the customary draw by the top 5 drivers taking part in a lucky draw to see who would be first on the road to open up. Important information regarding some route changes were presented in due course, and then it was on to the day's racing action. Ahead of the crews lay a 94-kilometer loop that would be hit 3 times during the racing. Once in the morning as the prologue to determine the starting positions and the time gaps for the main race later in the day, and then twice more in the main event, making the day's racing a massive 282 kilometers of rugged, dusty off-road terrain. In another first for the 4x4 Mega World Inland Off-Road Championship, a kiddies, bikes and quads social event was held in the morning. These are the future stars of tomorrow, and a group of 16 riders on bikes and quads, aged between 7 and 11, eagerly tackled the 1-kilometer course. The bikes ran for the first hour, followed by the quads, who also ran for an hour. They might be small and young, but the skill and technique shown by these pint-sized riders are already a very high standard. In keeping with the 4x4 Mega World Inland Off-Road Championship motto, putting the fun back into racing. An initiative like the Kiddies event goes a long way towards building up to a greater future for the championship and for the future of the sport overall. Every single one of the kiddies who participated thoroughly enjoyed proceedings, and they all made it through unscathed and happy. Join us after the break as we get ready for the big show.
Motor Stories Porsche lover Marco Venland from Hamburg makes a dream come true. An original 84 Porsche 911 Coupe.
The car is like new. I think this is the best 911 I've ever driven.
Big Mikey, the auto profiler from Los Angeles, tracked down the collector's piece in San Francisco.
That's the hunt for a car like the primal scream of a caveman. You can go out into nature and hunt the mammoth. You can find it, you kill it, and bring it home. It's just great.
Welcome back. It's time for the prologue action for the Car Brigade. Ahead of all the competitors lay a daunting qualifying race of 94 kilometers. Who would come out on top? Time would tell. Dylan Fenter and Donovan Lubber in the 4x4 Mega World Toto Hilux after drawing the first starting position in the unlucky for some #1 position. They had the dubious task of opening up the road. Being first on the road has an advantage, no dust to contend with, but on the other side of the coin, you have to find your route. So it's easy to wrong slots if the navigation is not 100% on point. The young team kept good pace throughout and finished the prologue in a very respectable 5th place overall and 4th in ultra competitive Class T. Malcolm Koch and Johan Berger in the T8 Ford Ranger running in the Class Ts. Malcolm's regular navigator, his son Franz Koch, was busy with exams and was now replaced by Johan. As is the situation with new navigators, it always takes a little bit of getting used to, but the pair soon settled into a nice rhythm and clinched the 8th fastest time overall, and more importantly, 5th in the highly competitive Class Ts. Malcolm is certainly no slouch behind the wheel, and they were looking forward to improving their position during the main race. Setting off 3rd on the road was the T5 of Jacques Van Tonder and Sammy Redlinghuis in their Road to Dakar Ford Ranger. The pair settled nicely into a steady drive, this time not having to open up the road, as was the case in the previous event. A steady pace, if you could call racing flat out through the bushes a steady pace, saw them coming home in a well-placed 4th overall and 3rd in Class T. Could this be an event where they rose to the occasion and took the top spot on the podium? Well, in another 188 kilometers, that question would be answered. The Nissan Navara pairing of Ernst Robertson and Henry Kerner were up next in their T333. Ernst only recently joined the off-road racing fray as a competitor some 2 seasons back, but literally took to the sport like a proverbial duck to water, improving, so to speak, with every outing. He certainly needed to be viewed as a serious threat to the teams fighting for the top honours. Bringing it home in 2nd place overall and 1st in Class T, the Roberts-Kerner combination was chomping at the bit for the main event. They would have some big competition though, as Chris Visser alongside Charlize Visser and Albertus Visser were going to be doing a chase down in their Class FIA Toyota Hilux. National competitor Chris, with 2 of his children navigating for him this time around, came to play in the big show. The man is extremely fast and proved so again on the morning by posting the quickest time overall on the 95-kilometer loop. Big Chris was the man to beat. In the D class, the D33 of Francois van der Walt and Gerry Prinsloo were up next. Having some bad luck in the last few events, the pairing was certainly looking for a good outing this time around. Never short on speed, but lacking in the reliability stakes in 2019, they set off on the prologue, as always, knowing one speed, and that's flat out. Picking up a misfire in the engine didn't help matters though, and they soldiered on to finish the prologue in an uncharacteristically low 18th overall. The chase would now be on for them. For the Class Ps, it was disappointment at the last time of asking for Willem de Tooy and Kevin Riley. The pair were now hoping to return to the top step of the podium, a place they've got used to in the early part of this season's championship. They too only know one pace, and that's flat out. Things were off to a flyer in the early part of the prologue, but it seemed that they were on par for a great result. That was, however, until a broken gearbox put them out of contention, and they had to withdraw to bitter disappointment. Still leading the Class T battle, however, and with 2nd place, Tony and Mikey Gavea not racing due to Tony being injured, they sustained their lead on the championship table for now. The G11 and the first of the ultra-competitive side-by-sides. Marcus Labuskakny and Neil Putter were there to take on the charge. As always, charging as hard as possible in the SXS. Their prologue came to an unfortunate end as well though, when they ripped their left rear wheel off in the twisted terrain. This meant speedy repairs and a charge from behind in the main event. The main crew to watch out for in the Class S battle were always going to be the Barbaspan father and son teammates and pairing of Jannie and Peter Visser, who so often punch above their weight class by beating out some of the more favoured Class T cars. They've even won an event outright this year, and having a trouble-free prologue, things were looking good for the pairing once again. A very respectable 6th overall and first in Class S was not to be sneered at. They would have competition from some old stalwarts of the sport, Heine Stumpfer and Henry Hugo. They've been missing in action for a while now, but Heine decided to roll out the old wagon and have a go at the Stella 250. Showing that he hasn't lost any of his speed, he set down some of the fastest splits in the early stages of the prologue, but Lady Luck was not on his side and Mechanical Gremlins put paid to their charge. It would be a DNF and the event would be over. In the G2, the brothers Werner and Leon Mostert are having a busy season, racing in both national and regional championships and leading them both as well. Was 2019 going to be the year that they went for the double, winning both championships on the bounce? Well, although we're getting to the sharp end of the season where sanity should prevail and crews looking to maintain their championship lead would be rolling off, this certainly wasn't the case for the Mosterts. 7th overall and first in Class G in the prologue meant they were the crew to catch once again, and it would be again an interesting racing in the side-by-sides. The T41 of Vos Prinsloo, now alongside Andre Vermeulen in their Ford Class T Ranger, have quietly snuck themselves into 3rd place for the Class Ts. The very likeable crew have steadily become a force to be reckoned with in 2019. Force moved into 3rd place in the Class T Drivers' Championship, and if it wasn't for some mechanical issues in rounds gone by, he would have been challenging for the very top spot. The pace was there in Stella for the 250. 2nd in Class T and 3rd overall after the prologue was a great result, and all eyes were on the big guy for the main race. In the P class, the P3 of Keith and now Andrew McInerney joining him in the hot seat. Tiello Machiavelli out for this round. Keith and Tiello had won the Class T battle at the previous round, the Goldco Midas Bloom 250, and the crew were hoping for more of the same this time around, even though there was a new navvy in the chair. It was a nice run in the prologue this time around. The crew brought it home 13th overall and 2nd in Class P, set themselves up nicely for the main event, and also to try and climb the ladder in the championship. For Pete and Benjamin Kutzer in the S11, the father and son pairing seem to have found a new turn of speed since their previous event, where they qualified well within the top 10. Not that you would call them slow, but consistency is more of their forte. As the season progressed, they seemed to get better with each event and hope to apply their newfound pace with more regularity. After a good run in the prologue this time, they came home with the magical 10th place overall, putting them 2nd in Class S. For Glenn Teron and Craig Galvin in the G110, the 3rd outing for the pair, they were hoping to build on their 4th place in the previous race where they had broken a front drive shaft and had to complete most of the event with only 2-wheel drive. For this event, the Can-Am sported new livery, bright yellow, so it was quickly dubbed Bumblebee. Having a few hassles though, amongst others, fuel pump problems. They qualified 23rd overall and 4th in Class G, putting them right in the sand bucket. Not exactly what they were hoping for. It was going to be a testing event from here on out. For the D1 of Lawrence Van Veek and Monty Rube, the Toyota Hilux pair seemed to find their pace as the season progressed, and Mechanical Gremlins also seemed to be a thing of the past. Fighting hard to keep the number 1 plate in Class D, they had a trouble-free run in their trusty old Hilux. Enjoying the terrain, which had a bit of everything thrown into the mix, when the results came out, they were right on the top of the pile in the Class Ds and 15th overall. The race for Class D honours was now theirs to lose. For the G22 team of Christo Rose and Tion Swat, the team were never short on speed, always in the mix for a podium finish, and they were doing well in the championship to date also. Putting in a decent charge saw the pair finish the prologue in a respectable 3rd place in Class G and almost smack bang in the first quarter of the field, 14th overall. For the P11 of Francois Smit and Ferdy Petersen in the Zarco Light, running in the Class Ps. It's a season to forget so far. Plagued with bad luck, misfortune and mechanical failures, they were really eager to show their turn of speed here at the next event. Things started off well, and at the halfway marker of the 94-kilometer prologue, their split time showed they were in a Class P honours battle. Things were going well for the pair then, but Lady Luck had other ideas. 64 Ks into the prologue, they came to an abrupt halt. Electrical problems this time put paid to their race, and they eventually only got going to limp back into the pits. They tried in vain once they were back to find the fault, but had to eventually withdraw from the race. Another disappointing end to a race weekend. For the A25 of Dion Boyens and Jox Leroux, they were also hoping to have a good showing. Dion and Jox had a fairly eventful prologue, and in the absence of a regular Class A frontrunner, Stefan van Pletsen and Jaco Pietersen, they clinched the prologue in fine style, ending first in Class A and a very handy 12th overall. Cobus Fourie and Philippe Leroux were out in a different vehicle this time around. Cobus decided to dust off his Class P car after having a few outings in Class A earlier in the season. Absolutely nothing wrong with his turn of speed though on the Class P. Cobus and Philippe won the Class P prologue and finished first in class, taking it to 9th, single digits overall. For Stain Viviers and Richard Carey in the S777 twin-turbo version of the Ford Ranger, they arrived at Stella as the team to beat in Class S, following their victory at the last event. The Goldco Midas 250 held in their hometown of Bloemfontein. Setting good pace in the early prologue, unfortunately it all came apart. An alternator cried no more. That was them, out of the race. It was a welcome return for Arnold Norkier as he sat in the navigating chair alongside Tians de Toy in the D11. The team battled with no intercom during the prologue and had to rely on old school hand signals. But despite a few hairy moments, they had a relatively clean run and ended 3rd in Class D and 17th on the overall standing charts. For the D25 of Hein Kruger and Paul Marais, the pair had a reasonable run as well in the prologue and the car felt good. Friends, bystanders and their crew told them afterwards that it sounded like the car had a misfire, but the pair were adamant that there was nothing wrong and the car felt good. 5th in Class D and 19th overall was perhaps not where they wanted to be, but a decent result nonetheless. For the D44 of Louis Weichelt and Heineke Erasmus in the Prado, the car was coming together nicely this season and seemed to run better and better every time it went out. Keeping a nice pace and showing the potential of the car, the crew brought it home to run a stunning 2nd place in Class D and 16th overall. The Class D battle seemed to be hotting up nicely as the big dices were now on the cards for the main race. The indestructible E1 of Andre Geldenhuys and Victor Fincham, the defending Class E champions, were having a rather forgettable season so far. Things have not gone their way at all, with loads of mechanical issues putting paid to their chances of a successful defense of their title. However, the season is far from over and lots can still happen. They were hoping for a turn for the better, but the Stella 250 seemed to not play the game. Struggling through the prologue, they only managed 4th place in Class E, 27th overall, having to try and fight now from the back of the pack, deep in the dust this time around, once again. For the E4 of Dirk Putter and Henny Hutting, the Ford Ranger Class E, current Class E and overall production championship leaders, they started off their season well with a string of victories. Their luck has turned for the last few races, and the Class E top step of the podium has eluded them too often in the latter part of the 2019 season. A good qualifying ended up 2nd in Class E and 22nd overall, putting them in good spirits, and they were keen to tackle the main race with all the pace that they could possibly muster. The E7 of Oki and Jandre Kruger, another of our father and son teams. Consistency has paid off for them so far in this championship chase. Not having taken a class win yet this season though, they were coming into Stella as the event that they'd marked to try and show their true mettle. It's only a matter of time before they take a much deserved win in Class E though. The Stella Prologue saw them home in 3rd place in class and 26 on the overall ladder. For the E11 of Rudolph de Toy and Ben Sutherland in their Class E Toyota Hilux, the crew have found some serious pace in the second half of this season. Clinching the class win at the last event in Bloom, they were looking for a repeat performance. They kept their hopes high of a back-to-back victory alive with a fine prologue win in Class E, coming home 21st overall. Engine development, dropping a Range Rover Evoque 2-litre petrol turbo motor into the Land Rover has definitely helped out the situation for the D111 of Sorrel Oosthuizen and Gile Leroux. So far this season, the Landy has performed admirably well, maybe showing the way for the future regarding the engines, as big naturally aspirated petrol engines are becoming a thing of the past, slowly but surely. They unfortunately succumbed to mechanical failure though during the prologue and recorded a DNF, but hastily repaired and got themselves out, ready for the main event. The D16 of Regan Austin and Warren Foss, another crew who probably wished their season was over and could start again. 2019 has not been their year, and if it wasn't for bad luck, they'd have none at all. This time around, a broken prop shaft in the prologue meant a DNF, and they were out once again on the sidelines. The A14 crew seemed to have come on in leaps and bounds in 2018, and once again the Jimco in the Class A of Sean Kruger and Johan Becker were there to tough it out. 24th in the qualifying, but still a second in Class A, meant it was going to be a busy day right in the dust bubble. The P67 of Johan Stein and Ronald Smith were doing a great job in the Class P Sandmaster. Moving up into the Class P after having competed in their Class B Zarko early in the season, things were going well until a bump stop cable on the left front suspension snapped. Unable to effect roadside repairs, they elected to withdraw before more damage was caused to the shock absorbers. A sad end to the P67. The P5 of Jaco van Aert and Jason Venter in their Sandmaster in the Class Ps. A complete role reversal this time around. While Jason's Class T Hilux is undergoing repairs and a rebuild, Jason ended up in the navigator's role, whilst Jaco was on the main controls. I'm sure there were a few nervous moments on the navigation side, thinking that Jaco might exact some revenge on Jason, but in the end, sanity prevailed, and they took 3rd place in Class P and a 25th overall. It's going to be fun to see how they gelled through the rest of the event. For the E39 of Johan Wieser and Jerry Besson, the Toyota Hilux Class E, another team from whom the 2019 season has not been the greatest. Qualifying 6th in Class E is surely not where they wanted to be. Having not competed regularly this season, the team for the Class E's, Frikkie Steyn and Conrad Mantz, were looking for a trouble-free and drama-free run in the prologue. Their reward was 5th place in Class E and 28th overall, keeping them nicely in the mix and out of trouble. The B101 was back into the mix with Colleen Croshaw and Marina van Skalkwyk. Once again, our top 2 ladies getting the job done, mother and daughter combining well to bring it home first in Class B and a relatively trouble-free run overall by all accounts. After a rebuild in the mid-season, the Beetle Baja in Class Bs was back in the mix, the B100 of Sifu van Skalkwyk and Arthur Croshaw. Their race was short-lived, however, as they took out their left rear suspension with a rather large rock. Rock versus Beetle. Beetle 0. Rock's the winner this time. The D22 of Wayne and Keith Smith. The brothers have been doing good when they can hold it all together. Unfortunately, a number of niggles hampered their progress this time around, and they ended up 6th in Class D. Also, we're going to be a crew in the D22 to try and charge from the back of the pack. The B27 of Christopher and Jeremy Mitchell in the Sandmaster running the Class Bs put in their first appearance in the 4x4 Mega World Inland Off-Road Championship this season. The brothers from Rustenburg were keen on a good showing. Early pace certainly seemed like they were in for a win, but mechanical issues put them out of the prologue and also out of the race. With their flamboyant driving style, we can only hope that they will return and have a clean run, as they certainly seem to have the speed for a podium finish. And if not a podium finish, certainly some style to show off to the fans. Another first outing was the G87 of Theo Erasmus and Edward Odendahl, arriving into the championship late on in the 2019 season. They certainly didn't seem to lack speed and came home first out with an impressive second place in Class G and 11th overall, and that against a much more fancied opposition with loads more experience. It seemed in this case, ignorance was definitely bliss, but could they hold it all together for the full race distance? In the F class, the old Datsun of PM de Villiers and Jacques Van Heerden were out there in the oldest car in the series by far. PM and Jacques put the Datsun, yes, Datsun, not Nissan, through its paces. The car is circa mid-70s and probably spent years doing service as a farm bucky before being turned into a full-on race bucky. Unfortunately, they suffered a DNF, but were trying their best to muck a plan and get the bucky back on the line. The second of our all-lady teams was back in action after a disappointing DNF at the previous event in Bloemfontein. Suma Smit and Gabby Petersen in the Zarko Light running in the Class Ps hit trouble shortly before the start of the prologue, when in the lineup their starter motor gave up the ghost and they couldn't get the car started. Luckily, F1, the oldest racing bucky on the planet, came to their rescue and gave them a push start. They took it very easily through the prologue, ensuring that the car didn't stall out, meaning there was no way of getting going again. Very relieved, they made it to the end of the prologue and came home with a 4th in Class P, ready to tackle the main event. Very nervous, heart-in-mouth moments for the girls. A few teams would have a little bit of extra work to do to make sure they were on the main lineup. This is the results as they broke down, coming at the end of one of the toughest prologues to date on the 4x4 Mega World Inland Off-Road Championship Tour. Chris Visser was on the top of the charts with Ernst Roberts doing the chase down. Force Prinsloo, Jacques Van Tonder, Dylan Fenter, Yanni and Peter, and then Werner and Leon Mostert. An incredible drive for the fastest of the side-by-sides in 7th. Markham Koch was going to be one to watch out for as well, to try and see if he could improve on his qualifying. And then the open wheelers were going to do a charge down. The A25 of Dion Boyens and Jacques Leroux with the fastest of the open wheels, with Macanetti's just on their wheel a couple of seconds back. Join us after the break as we get ourselves ready for the main event. 2 full laps to see who was going to walk away with the Stella 250 victory.
Today on Garage Squad, we'll be working on a classic 1977 Pontiac Firebird Trans Am. It's the perfect example of a dream car that's been trapped in limbo for years.
Absolutely not.
No matter how much time or money the owner has spent on it,
All your oil pump ports are all open. You would have blew oil everywhere.
nothing ever seems to get done.
What?
Can we reignite this smoldering Firebird, or is she better off laid to rest?
Oh my lord.
This week on Kings of Crap.
Derby is not chess. It is blow 'em up. It is balls to the walls. It's hometown farm boys versus the Cityans. The rule says that it's got to have an obvious buckle, and I don't have a buckle, dude.
Can you not read the rules?
Johnny, let me handle this.
You got a bunch of rednecks writing rules, and different rednecks writing different rules.
Derby drivers are the biggest whining wusses there is.
How in the hell did you do that? I've never seen that out of 15 years.
Derby starts, Dickman's pulled right behind me, and I knew it was on.
Really, they're just a bunch of crybabies.
Stop the race! Medical, medical!
We'll see you in the main.
Oh, how I want to hit that car.
So with the morning session and the formality of the prologue out the way, it was now time to really let the dust fly. Chris Visser was in great shape. He now knew what the course was going to be looking like, and he would have no dust to deal with. Everyone else would be chasing into the dust. Ernst Roberts and Henry Kerner seemed to have gelled extremely well on this tour, and with their Nissan Navara, they were in with a shout of rocking and rolling all the way to the top, but they were going to be pushed very hard by Visser out front and Vos from behind. Vos has really started to find his groove and his pace. Jacques Van Tonder looking to find some results, but a loose bonnet early on would be a massive distraction. Dylan Fenter and Donovan Lubber, they're looking to taste the very top step. They've had a second and a third. They're looking for the big number one. Yanni and Peter Visser in the Class S. We call them the Giant Killers because they can so often take their little plucky Class S all the way and beat a lot of the Class Ts and sometimes the Class FIAs. Leon and Werner Mostert, the Class Gs, the men that are looking for a double championship, that's national and regionals in one season, did their best qualifier of the year, qualifying in 7th overall, setting themselves up for a great run. Malcolm Koch and Johan Berger also gelling well with the former NWM Ford Ranger. They qualified just inside the top 10 ahead of Kurbis, Furry and Philip LaRue. The P44, a massive surprise package in the second half of the 2019 championship. Pete and Benjamin Kotzer had their best qualifier, but as you can see, if you didn't qualify inside the top 10, you were going to be sucking dust early on. The side-by-sides, remember, do not have the luxury of a screen, neither do any of the open wheel categories. The A25 of Dion Boyens and Jacques Leroux were going straight into a brown wall. Keith McInerney and Andrew McInerney gelling and pairing up for the first time in 2019. The P03 already getting lost in the dust, along with Christo Rose and Tion Swart. The pace outside the top 15 was dropping off a cliff. That meant all the qualifiers inside the top 10 were running and hiding and would no doubt set off and set the fastest lap times on lap number 1. Let's take a look inside of the D33 with Francois van der Walt and Gerry Prinsloo. Bit of a gap out front, but they would be able to catch that up very quickly, and as soon as they got in the dust they would go blind. But remember, all of these crews have already been out onto this track for the prologue in the qualifying run on the morning session, so not totally blind, but they would be very much reliant on the calls from their navigators come the main race. Wayne and Keith Smith in the D22 had done a good enough job just squeaking their way inside the top 20 for qualifying, but they were a long way off the pace. But they would try and challenge a little bit further up the order to try and get into a podium placing for the Class Ds. Rudolf de Toy and Ben Sutherland in the E11, also down on number 21 on the start line queue, around about the halfway marker of the knuckle. Dirk Putter and Henny Hutting in the E4 were going to be chased down by Bumblebee, Glenn Tarrant and Craig Galvin in those Calyx bright yellow colors. The G110 would have a busy day trying to make those early passes in the technical first couple of kilometers. Van Aert and Venter, not Venter and Van Aert. It's going to be fun to see what JJ could do on the notes. He was going to be busy all day long. Oki and Jandre Kruger, the E7, trying to nail down a win in the E-Class, would be pushed very hard out on the terrain by the unstoppable and ever consistent as well, Gildenace and Fincham. For Frikkie Steen and Conrad Mantz in the E8, it was going to be a hard charge, and as we saw with the previous event, the Class E's gave us some of the closest racing on the event at Bloemfontein. For Carleen Croshaw and Marina van Skalkbeek, the B101, qualifying low, 29th, but they would once again just apply their formula, which is safe, consistent, and bring it to the finish. For Suma Smith and Gabby Peterson, looks like their starter motor issues had been resolved between the prologue, and they were once again going to go out and have a busy day of it, charging from the back of the pack. The good news for them was 29 crews already had cut up the terrain. Join us after the break to see what drama unfolded at the Stella 250.
We're filming this TV show. It's called Ranking the Cars.
Welcome to Ranking the Cars. Have you always wondered who's behind the wheel of those eye-catching and expensive cars? Well, you've tuned into the right show, because here you'll get to meet the world's most eccentric and funny drivers.
How you doing?
Good, what about you?
You want to be my girlfriend?
Well, for 2 seconds in the car.
Hello, Sunny Banani, Dumelang, and welcome to another episode of the world of buying and selling. Yep, that's right. It's time for Buyer's Guide.
Adam Ford and Segi Mudley, together with a panel of expert guests, have years of experience under their belts to advise you on your next automotive decision. Whether it be choosing between your next new or used vehicle purchase.
So for me, the i20 because it's more spacious, but the Picanto would be more affordable.
To mechanical advice.
I feel that the service and quality has been slipping slightly too.
To warranty and service plan advice.
In the Mazda's, the 3-year warranty isn't extendable to 5 years.
And sometimes we just have a good laugh as well.
You like ugly cars. Mark!
That's Buyer's Guide, your one-stop shop for all your motoring needs. Only on Ignition, DSTV channel 189.
The T44 of Louis Weishart and Heineke Erasmus had a great run in the early stages until disaster struck. The crew saw flames in the cab and slowed down as much as possible before bailing out, thankfully not injuring each of them. The car unfortunately burnt down to a molten mess of nothing, even though the flame retardant system did go off. Also quick to react were the crews and officials. The fire was contained to the immediate area with no surrounding property damaged, but a very sad end to the D44. For the Land Rover of Sarel Oosthuizen and Gilles Leroux, they were the final finishers, scoring a 28th overall, putting them to the bottom of the pile, but still putting valuable points on the plate, and in a development season, putting the Evoque engine into the old Land Rover. It's starting to look like a very strong package going forward into 2020. For PM de Villiers and Jacques Van Heerden in the F1, the oldest Datsun out there, they did a sterling job just to bring it home and complete full race distance in a race time of just over 5 hours. Good job for the winners of the F-Class. Our first ladies team, now with a new starter motor in place donated by their husbands, the P18 of Smits and Peterser, the ladies set off on the main race with renewed confidence. On the first loop, they picked up a little bit of barbed wire, which didn't help the case as they tangled the front and rear wheels and lost a huge amount of time trying to get themselves back into the game. The second loop ran much smoother and they finished the Class P podium off with a nice third place. B101, the second of our all-ladies lineup of Colleen Croshaw and Marina van Schalkwyk, did a nice job as well, finishing off in style, clinching the Class B win in the process, a fitting end for our ladies doing so well, of course, in National Women's Month. For the D22 of the Smiths, Wayne on the wheel, Keith on the notes. They did a good enough job for 5th in Class D, but were severely punished, proving how important it is to get a good position coming out of the prologue to start the racing weekend. Same story with the G11, 5th in Class G, and of course they had to do a lot of repairs. That was Marcus Labuskakny and Neil Putter just somehow managing to get a wheel onto the back of their Can-Am Maverick to keep them in the championship chase. It was also championship considerations for Andre Gildenes and Victor Fincham, the reigning champions in the Class E series from 2018, battling for form this time around, would eventually walk away just off the podium with a 4th place in class here at Stella. Half the crew had told them they heard something funny, and Hein Kruger and Paul Moret had said, nah, she'll be good. Unfortunately, it came. After changing a flat tyre 10 kilometers into the main race, they finally heard the misfire. They eventually stopped at the start of the second loop and found a loose coil plug. promptly stuck it back into position, and suddenly the car ran like a dream. They had to stop twice more to fix the same plug, and the car ran faultlessly after that until the end for a well-deserved 4th place in Class D, but the crew this time had the last laugh. For Aki and Jandre Kruger in the E7, they eventually got themselves into the top 20 overall, but more importantly, because of problems in the rest of the class, they got 3rd place in Class E and would now be considered high championship threats with the season winding down. And as has been the case the whole way through the 2019 tour, Class E's giving us the best racing and the best championship throughout the field. Join us after the break and see who managed to squeak their way into a top 20 overall.
From building out the numbers Hemi to matching the factory original FK5 paint, witness the restoration of the burnt orange 1970 Dodge Charger and the biggest reveal in the history of graveyard cars.
So before the break, we were up to magical number 20. 19th overall come the end of the day was Christo Rose and Tion Swat in the G22. They'd been trying to get themselves into podium contention, and they did almost do it as well. The whole way through their day had a massive dice with the G110 to try and battle their way up into the top 3 and the podium placings. 4th place was the highest they would eventually climb. The crew they were dicing with the whole way through the day was Bumblebee, Glenn Turon and Craig Galvin in the G110. A very nice drive, but they were dogged by many mechanical hassles, and the dice with G22 just put even more pressure on them. It didn't help that they were stuck, sandwiched between some in-house battles for the open wheelers as well. Still, Bumblebee did a good enough job in their 3rd outing together to get 3rd in the ultra-competitive G-Class side-by-sides. For Dirk Putter and Henny Hutting, they've been looking for that consistent form, and it's starting to finally come to them. The E4 got themselves all the way up the order and eventually tagged a 2nd place in Class E. Not just that, it gave them one of their highest overall finishes, well inside the top 20. The onboard shots here gave us a incredible view of just how tough the terrain was out there, and super dusty. What was dust turned to talcum powder, meaning that if you had clear air you could run. It was up to the guys behind you to have to really risk it into the dust bowl. Putter having a very nice season of it at the end of the year. For Jaco van Aert on the wheel and Jason Venter on the notes, they did themselves proud. Class P runners, 16th overall, and incredibly 2nd in Class Ps on their very first time out together. And I really think Jaco enjoyed being on the wheel and scaring the heck out of Jason on the notes. For Rudolf de Toy and Ben Sutherland in the E11, they had a nice run. They eventually took it to a Class E win. That's now 2 in a row for them. Can they keep their winning streak going as we head into the season finales? But the E11 is now the Bucky to beat in class. The D33s, Francois van der Waalt and Gerry Prinsloo, really made their life a little bit difficult coming out of their poor qualifier. But they battled with the misfires and other hassles. They even broke their DNF duck and placed 3rd in Class D. That's all they wanted. They wanted to see the flag, and this time at the Stella 250, they got it. For Jacques Van Tonder and Sammy Radlinghays in the T5, just a few kilometers into the race, and we saw it off the start line, their bonnet came undone and flipped up, smashing out their windscreen. Roadside repairs meant kicking out the offending windscreen and continuing their race, wearing the emergency goggles, luckily in place in the cab. They made it to the finish, 5th in Class T, to keep their championship hopes alive. But without that bonnet situation, it could have been a totally different story. For the men to beat in the G-Class, Werner and Leon Mostert, even though they qualified well inside the top 10 with a 7th overall, they did drop down to 12th, showing that they just really got beaten up by the more powerful machines around them. Still, they were good enough to take a 2nd in Class G and keep their own championship alive. They clearly had issues on the day. For the T41, 4th in category in the Class Ts. Vos Prinsloo and Andre Vermeulen had a great drive in their Ford Ranger. They also qualified well, but got stuck in the dust, had some issues of their own, dropping themselves out of a top 10 overall. But 4th in class still shows their pace. Tians de Toy and Arden Norkia, after getting stuck in a bush as a result of an overshoot, they lost nearly a minute. With racing as close as it is in all classes, losing a minute can definitely hurt you badly for the overall. Fortunately, they drove like demons, keeping their 2nd place in Class D intact, and at the end of the day, also sneaking their way inside a top 10 overall, the D11, showing some great form at the end of the 2019 tour. The first crew to crack their way into single digits. That's 9th place overall for Lawrence Van Veek and Marnie Roux. They again had one of their best drives of the season to top the charts in the Class Ds. Again, showing how important it is to throw down the big run in the morning session. Position yourself well inside the top 10 and you can then run and try and chase down a category win. Class Ds belonged to Van Veek and Roux. For Keith and Andrew McInerney, they cracked their way inside a top 8 overall, but that wasn't just the big story for them. The brothers had a clean run, upping the pace where necessary, and recorded their 2nd Class P win in as many outings. Great to have the brothers pairing up well, and that should keep them both super happy on the driving and the note side of the cab. For Theo Erasmus and Edward Odendahl, this was the breakout rookie drive of the 2nd half of the season. The G87 absolutely hammered the field, and it's going to be fun to see what they can do as they walked away with the Class G win and a stunning 7th overall. On pace and on paper, they truly look like the only crew that can take the fight straight to the foot of the Mosterts. Keeping up their recent run of good form, Pete and Benjamin Kotzer once again showed what they can do. A well-deserved 2nd place in Class S, and more importantly than that, showing that they can also run inside of the top 6 overall. Crew up the road from them and back to winning ways inside of the top 5 overall. Yanni and Peter Visser showed their dominance and why they are known as the Giant Killers on this tour, with S2 taking a well-deserved victory in category. for one of the youngest crews out there, and a crew that has tasted a second and a third earlier in the season. They were looking to go one step better. This time around, they had to settle for a 4th overall, but more importantly, a incredible 3rd in Class T. They'd be happy. Dylan Fenter and Donovan Lubber have put together one of the most consistent seasons of their young racing career. T8 of Malcolm Koch and Johan Berger also did an incredible job. Since getting into their new, or second-hand, but new to them, vehicle, the Ford Ranger has absolutely been charging up the order. An incredible drive to give them 2nd in Class T and a 3rd overall on the road. T333, who has also tasted victory on every aspect of his racing season so far in 2019 at club, regional and national level. Once again, it was a standout drive, putting a 1st place next to the names in Class T of Ernst Roberts and Henry Kerner. And for Big Chris Visser, who is by all means a superstar up in the Northwest as far as off-road championship racing goes, he took another emphatic overall victory and a win in the Class FIA alongside Charlize Visser as well as Albertus Venter, who helped him along his way. But the big guy once again will stand on the top of the charts in one of his best ever national and regional championship tours to date. So at the end of the Stella 250, everyone knew they had been out there in a fight. Everyone had tasted dust. Everyone, that is, except Big Chris Visser and his crew. Confirmation of the results then as we made our way through all of the categories. In the Class A specials, 2 DNFs, even though Sean Kruger and Johan Becker and Dion Boyens and Jacques Leroux are scored as 1 and 2. In the special vehicle Class Ps, the brothers McInerney did a great job to win out ahead of Van Aert and Venter. Croshaw and Van Skalkwyk once again topped the charts in the Class Bs, with the rest unable to make it to the finish line. In the overall specials, a great drive from the McInerney brothers, Keith and Andrew, to top the charts not only in class but also overall, with Jaco Van Aert and Jason Venter in 2nd for the special vehicles. Into the production vehicles then, starting with the Class Ds, a great drive for Van Veek and Roux to top the charts ahead of De Toy and Norkia. For the Class Es, De Toy and Sutherland, now the team to beat at the end of the season, putting the hurt on Putter and Hutting. And for the side-by-sides, the SXSs, the G-Class for Erasmus and Odendahl, beating out the almost unstoppable Mostert brothers of Werner and Leon, and Glenn Theron and Craig Galvin. Bumblebee getting a solid number 3. In the production vehicle Class Ts, which is the scariest category to race in, Ernst Roberts and Henry Kerner once again topped the charts, putting the hurt on Malcolm Koch and Johan Berger, who did a great job. In Class S, once again the returning champion, Janni and Peter Visser on top. And in overall production, even though Big Chrisser took the event, he was an invitational racer, did not score points. The points then went to Ernst Roberts and Henry Kerner as the top finishers, ahead of Malcolm and Johan Berger, Dylan Fenter and Donovan Lubber ahead of Janni and Peter Visser. Great racing all throughout the Stella 250, and commiserations to the loss of the D44, Louis Weishalt and crew. Thankfully all safe, but the car is done. On to nicer and happier occasions though, and the prize giving, where for the first time ever, all the juniors, as well as all the senior entrants, were awarded their trophies and their just desserts at the end of the event. Congrats to all who arrived and completed the Stella 250, juniors and seniors alike. As the 2019 season gets long in the tooth, we prepare ourselves for the next event on the calendar, Della Rayville, round number 7, on the 12th of October. We'll see you there.